Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and taking on a topic today that I'm really delighted to be involved with, and hopefully you can glean some good information about this, and maybe the Lord's kind of tugging on your heart to consider this. And we're going to be talking about hope for orphans and the whole subject of adoption. I am really honored to have with us today Dr. Jon Bergeron with us. He is a clinical psychologist, and he himself and his wife Shelley have adopted children, and he heads up the organization Hope for Orphans. And Dr. Jon, nice to have you, my friend. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. It's great to be on your show.
Oh, thank you. Well, give us a little bit of a snapshot of Hope for Orphans.
I sure will. Hope for Orphans was actually started by our executive director, Paul Pennington, and his wife about 12 years ago. After their adoption, God really called them to want to send that message and that call out to churches, in their area. And so they started visiting churches and talking about God's heart for the orphan and how adoption is living the gospel, and it just really spread. And then about 10 years ago, we had the opportunity to come under Family Life Ministries, and they've really helped us to expand. And now, our goal is to serve orphans through serving the church and giving them the tools that they need to reach out to orphans, and through foster care and adoption and even international orphan care ministries.
So what pulled you into this? Here you are, a psychologist. What got you involved in this?
Well, the obvious answer is God. He called us into foster care, actually, initially, and my wife and I, really thought that God was calling us to just have foster kids in our home as long as they needed it, and then they would either be adopted or go back home, as the case indicated. But God really called us from there into adoption, and so we adopted one of the first kids that came to live with us, our son Tanner. And he also brought us into the whole world of special needs adoption. Both of our boys, Tanner and our older son, who we adopted 3 years ago from China, they're both deaf. And so God's given us a lot of different opportunities to serve and to get educated about foster care and adoption and orphan ministries. And then from that, God just really used those experiences to kind of prepare me for an opening with Hope for Orphans about 1.5 years ago to come on as director of their FamilyCare initiative. Because what we were seeing is that a lot of families in the church had answered that call to adopt and to go into foster care, but it's tough, and there's some real specific skills that families need. And with my clinical background, I was able to begin serving some of those families and developing resources to help them.
Well, I think a lot of potential adoptive parents think about this and pray about this, but they just don't know all of the ins and outs. And also then you hear that actually at the end of the day it's quite difficult. Hopefully you can help them navigate through that.
Yeah, and that's why we put together this book we call Safe Harbor, which is a Christian's Guide to Foster Care.
Right.
We have a similar resource about adoption called Welcome Home. And the idea about these two resources is to give Christians, number one, a biblical understanding of God's heart and how much he values the vulnerable in our society, and especially the orphan and the fatherless. And from there, looking at what is the mandate that God puts on the church and us as Christians to answer that call, and how can we step up, and then giving some kind of, in these two resources, just some basics about what does it look like to adopt, and in Safe Harbor, what is the foster care system, how does it work, and how as Christians can we engage that and answer God's call to care for the orphan. How
do they get a copy of the Safe Harbor, Jon?
They can go on our website at hopefororphans.org, and there on the sidebar you'll see Safe Harbor. It's got a lighthouse on the front, and they can click on that and download that for free.
All right, it's called Safe Harbor, the Christian's Guide to Foster Care, and you may want to check that out there on their website. Jon, is it hard to adopt in the United States? Because we know a lot of people that go to foreign countries and adopt children. Is there similar hassles, or is it pretty much independent?
Well, if you're comparing international adoption with domestic adoption through the foster care system, it's actually a lot easier to adopt through the foster care system.
Okay.
One of the challenges is a lot of folks, when they initially go into adoption, are looking for infants, and those are harder. there's not as many infants out there that need adoption, and there's a long line of people waiting. It's when we get into older kids and kids with special needs that actually the system makes it pretty easy and almost actually inexpensive, sometimes entirely free. We have the adoption tax credit that basically any fees that you put toward adoption, both at domestic and international, will to a certain extent will be you'll be able to get a tax credit for. Plus, with foster care, there's a lot of programs that actually help with the financial end of the piece. So for the vast majority of families, finances really shouldn't be an issue. Good. Especially when you're talking about domestic adoption.
Good. How big is this? How big is the need?
The need is pretty big. We've got around 400,000 kids in our foster care system. About 100,000 of those are waiting for homes to be adopted into. Wow. We hope in each case that kids can go back home, that whatever situation created the need for them to be removed can be improved and fixed, but that's not always the case. And about 100,000 kids right now are waiting and wanting a home and parents to take care of them.
Do you believe this is a calling for parents to get involved in?
I do. As I look through Scripture, it's very clear to me that God's desire for His people is that we're marked by a love for the fatherless, for the orphan, for the widow, for those in our society that are vulnerable. Right. And you see that throughout Scripture, both in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. And you especially see it, in the prophet Isaiah, who talks about how grieved God's heart is when His people are not taking care of those orphans and the fatherless and treating them unfairly. And so I believe it's a core calling for the church, and one that we all need to participate in. Now, that doesn't mean we all need to become foster parents or adoptive parents, but there is a place for everyone to get involved. One of our most popular resources is called 10 Ways, and it's a little card that lists 10 different ways that you can get involved in caring for orphans, and only one of those is adoption. And so that's one of our messages too, is that this is for everybody. It's not just for the families that are called specifically to adoption and foster, but it's for all Christians that love their God and want to bring glory to Him.
Well, this is wonderful. And again, it's called Hope for Orphans, hopefororphans.org. Is that right, John?
That's correct.
And you can go there and check out the Safe Harbor Christian Guide to Foster Care. Click on that lighthouse icon there and download this guide free. So thank you for making that available. Back to your personal story, you and Shelley, and you have two boys that have hearing problems or that are deaf. Yes. That's an extra challenge. And how did you know that when you adopt them, or how did that come about?
Well, that's an interesting story that I love to tell, because it's part of how God led us into a place we never imagined. We got licensed as foster parents, and my wife got a call from a caseworker that said, "Hey, we've got two kids ready that need a home, and we'd love to see if you guys would take them." And the first answer was that, well, we kind of agreed to one kid, so we're not sure about this two-kid thing. And then she said, "Oh, and the little boy, he's deaf." And my wife's like, "Well, neither of us know how to sign or anything about deafness." And the caseworker said, "Well, that's okay. He doesn't know how to sign either," which shocked us, because we thought, well, somebody needs to know how to communicate.
You're right.
So, but we really, we prayed about it and talked to, God about this, and it was clear to us that He wanted these kids in our home. And so from that point forward, we all learned sign language, and we learned about deafness and deaf education and deaf culture. And it's been just an amazing blessing, even though it's been challenging at times too.
At what point, as you as a foster parent, emotionally get pulled into the adoption arena?
Well, any parent knows that as you take care of a child, your heart just becomes connected with that child. Right. And in some cases, as a foster parent, you have to say goodbye, and that's tough. We did experience that with one of our foster children. But as we did that, we realized that there are some kids, like our son Tanner, who would not be safe if he went home. And so he needed a home, and the system kind of did their part in terms of making it possible that we could adopt him. And it was kind of a no-brainer at that point. It was just very clear to us that that's what God wanted us to do.
All right. In closing, Jon, what can you say to that couple that's been kind of thinking about this and they kind of maybe sensing the Lord leading them in this direction? What can you say to them to encourage them to go ahead and investigate it?
I'd say a couple of things. I think the most important thing, obviously, is to be praying about it, and most Christian couples are, and be listening to what God's really calling you to do, because He may have given you a heart to care for these kids, but it may not be adoption or foster care, and it's important to listen to that. Secondly, I think part of that listening is educating yourself a little bit about what does foster care entail and adoption, and in terms of the different kinds of kids that might come in our home. Are we equipped? And if we're not, can we, get the education and the resources we need to help kids that might come into our home? And I think through that process of prayer and educating yourself, God will be faithful and give you the answer you're looking for.
Well, this is really inspiring, and you are a great spokesman for the cause. It's called Hope for Orphans. You may want to check it out, hopefororphans.org. And when you're there, look for the lighthouse icon, click on that, and you can download free a little booklet called Safe Harbor, A Christian's Guide to Foster Care. Jon, thank you, my friend. Keep up the good work, and keep us posted, okay?
Thanks, Perry. It's been a pleasure.
All right, God bless. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
All right, we're back, and I'm always delighted to have Dave Dotterrer in the studio with us. And Dave was kind of a unique guy in the middle of the past legislature session, and that was you were the Republican rep between the House caucus and the Senate caucus on budget issues.
That's correct.
And baptism by fire, huh?
That's right. That's right. It's really interesting to see the differences in the caucuses. While they're ideologically joined at the hip, they have different cultures. They have different views. Given that the Senate is half the size of the House of Representatives, a little different mix of politics. Speaker of the House is not the same as the President. Yeah. So all those things are there. It's interesting.
They never had anybody do that before, had they?
No.
So you were the first.
I was the first, and as far as I know, the Democrats don't have anybody on that doing that either. And I really think it helps out a lot. Certainly for me, it was a fascinating viewpoint of the world, but it also gave me a chance. I tried to stay out of trying to dictate or anything like that. But I often found myself going back and forth, and I would hear something in the House, and then I'd go hear something in the Senate, and I'd think, these guys are not exactly on the same sheet of music here, and I just would mention it to them. Yeah. And then they would get together and talk about it a little bit.
Well, that's good. That's good. And so they did listen to you a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was nice. And it also gave me a chance to look at issues well beyond budget. Yeah. Everybody. A lot of people talk about me as the budget guy, but in a lot of ways, I was not just the budget guy. I also
got to see the big picture.
I got to see the big picture and look at the strategic view of what's really going on in that legislature.
All right. Now, the last time you were here, we talked about the possibility of a special session. You weren't sure and everything else. Well, the governor's called one at the end of the month. Yeah. And I'm sure this has to do with primarily PERS. And there's a lot of risk involved in this, even though something needs to be done. Do you think anything's going to get done with this?
You know what? I can't. I don't know. I've seen the press releases now coming out of the various organizations, and what you're really seeing is the Republicans are still saying, look, the grand bargain is not about PERS versus a tax increase. The grand bargain is PERS, a tax increase possibly, but also reform of the small business tax structure that we have in the state, because that's about jobs in the economy. So I'm not sure that you know, Stephen Covey's seek first to understand, all those things. Well, I'm not sure where that's going to go, because you kind of hear on the Democratic side, well, the grand bargain includes these 2 things. On the Republican side, it includes 3. And so we're kind of, that's going to be interesting.
But the purpose of this is that the PERS issue is upside down. We can't afford where it's going. Something has to be done with it. And if you go into session and you just kind of toss the ball around and never come up with anything, that's pretty risky going into an election year.
It is. And I think that in the end, they ought to make the decision, okay, we're going to do something about PERS.
Okay.
All right.
Has the governor thrown anything on the table?
Yeah, he has, but he hasn't thrown very much on the table. He's really essentially gone back to his original position way back when he, a year and a half ago, or no, not a year and a half ago, about a half a year ago, when he put together his original budget and talked about a certain amount of PERS reform. Okay, he's gone back to that. Just because what was actually passed was PERS light, was only half of what he asked for. So now he's asking for the other half, but he's asking the Republicans to give him this tax increase. And the Republicans are saying, you know what, there's more to this. You know, you asked for a bigger PERS package. All right, go ahead and have that PERS package. But there's also, if you want a tax increase, well, we also need to have more PERS reform, and we also need this small business tax relief.
All right, let's go political just for a moment.
Yeah.
Republicans are going into re-election.
That's correct.
Could they possibly allow for a tax increase?
Yeah, I think they could.
Really?
I think that they would be willing to go along with that.
Where?
And say, well, because what you're really looking at is there is a couple of places where you could take the taxes, tax deductions for the wealthy. And I mean, this was Romney's plan, and that's one of the proposals that's on the table. You know, what you really do is you don't increase the tax rates. What you do is, for people over a certain income level, you start staggering and cutting back the tax deductions. That's one of the proposals that's on the table. And so that's a possibility, and the Republicans are willing to do that. They understand there's a political risk to that, but the counter to that is, yes, but what we also want to do is we want to assist small business in this, you know, the S-corps and the LLCs with this tax relief also. So, okay, so there's your trade-off.
Okay. You know, some consultants and people who look kind of over the shoulders of these issues said that Oregon, there's a 50% chance Oregon's PERS is going to implode.
Correct.
Well, we're not talking 2 or 3%. We're talking 50%. This is a major thing.
Correct.
So you guys could go out there and tweak. I say you guys, you're not elected yet. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the legislature could tweak this. They're still in that 50% range.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's why the PERS, even what the governor is proposing, is not enough. It needs to be much, much bigger than what's being put on the table.
Do you think the employees' unions understand that they are heading towards some kind of a train wreck? This thing is going to implode.
No.
Okay, so they don't care.
I don't think they recognize that. What they've convinced themselves of, and I don't know, the cynical side of me says, well, they they don't want to understand.
Right.
But there are people who you can tell when I heard these discussions up there, they genuinely believe that this was all caused by Wall Street, and it's just this fluke of the 2008-2009. And so therefore we'll recover from this and we'll be back and it'll all be stable and happy days will be here again. And you keep looking at them and saying, you know, have you ever noticed that this happens every 5 to 10 years? You can't have a system that assumes no bad days. And we have bad days. It just happens, you know, and you just look at them and you just go,
all right. A couple of other questions that come out of this, Dave. First of all, how long do you think the session will be, the special session?
It's only called for 1 day. I mean, he's calling it for the 30th. That's my understanding. I don't know how long it'll last. I don't know. He's calling it for the 30th. I don't know how long.
So what happens behind the scenes? All right. So you go in the session for a day, but behind the scenes, the Republicans have got to be meeting and say, what are we doing here?
That's correct. That's correct. Oh, I can tell you, behind the scenes right now, the governor is trying to work a deal. I think that, remember, he hasn't absolutely called for it. He said, you know, here's a consideration. I'd like to do this. I don't think that unless there is a pre-deal, my guess is, I think most people, political analysts, would tell you that it's not going to happen. I mean, in other words, you're going to go into you don't go into the session with no deal, and so if there isn't a deal, then maybe probably the session won't happen.
And that could sway the election, because that could say to me, it's a no-win for conservatives, because if they raise taxes, that's going to upset their base.
That's right.
And if they don't do anything, that's going to inflame the unions to vote against them. I mean, so what are you going to do?
Well, no, you know what? First off, the unions aren't going to vote for him anyway.
Well,
so when you know what I mean? So, okay.
All right.
And I think exactly. There's some triangulation going on here. There's no doubt about this, but I just think that what Republicans need to do, and what I'm hearing them say is, look, these are the principles that we stand on. We're not going to change our principles. We will consider your proposal about taxes, but we want tax relief.
Yeah.
So
before we take a break, is there enough money to run the state?
This time around? Yes.
Okay.
Next time, all bets are off.
Really?
All bets are off.
So
I really, the economy of Oregon is not improving that much. It's getting a little bit better, but we are putting in place programs that we can't afford to operate, and particularly if you don't do PERS. I mean, if you would do PERS in a big way, that would have a huge impact on your ability to fund state government. You could significantly reduce the cost of it. And the other part that we need to remember is much of the money that gets spent by the state, particularly in the human services area, is actually spent by the counties. Okay, so your state government is sending money to the counties, and so it's their PERS costs that matter also. If you can reduce PERS, it has the biggest impact on your local governments. That's 40%. So there's so many moving parts here, and that's the problem. I don't see anybody stepping back and looking at the bigger picture.
Wow.
All
right, now we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Dave, and he's going to say something here exclusive and first, and I'm going to pull it out of him. And he's in the hot seat, and I'm not letting him go. We'll be right back with Dave Dotterrer.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and our guest today is Dave Dotterrer, and he is telling us a little bit about the expected, well, it's now been announced, there'll be a special session, the Oregon Legislature coming up September 30th, and it's to deal with PERS, and I guess at this point we'll see, huh?
We'll see. Yeah, the governor was, what he's put on the table is PERS and a tax increase. And the Republicans just put out Senate Republicans just put out a press release last night that said PERS, the tax increase, and small business tax relief.
Yeah.
That's what's on the table. Okay, so we'll see what ends up on the table.
All right, but if you give the numbers, the D's can do what they want.
They can't do the tax increase,
right?
But they can do PERS, and that's what the Republicans have said to them. Yeah. You know what? You don't need us for PERS. If you think PERS is so important, just pass PERS.
Yeah.
And we'll all come together. We'll pass it, and we'll all go home. Now we would push for a bigger PERS, but the Republicans would vote for more PERS, obviously.
All right, I want to take you to a headline that popped up in the news last night, and actually this happened last Tuesday, and that is Northern California County. This is Siskiyou County voted 4-1 of a declaration of succession from the state of Oregon. And they go down here a little bit further and they say, and we want Northern California and Southern Oregon to join us in the creation of the new state called the state of Jefferson. You probably have heard that.
Oh, absolutely.
For a long time.
That's pre-World War II.
This is the first time we've actually seen some form of government take action on this. What do you think of that?
My first thought is this.
Yeah.
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I look at it and I say, I don't know what the California Constitution says about succession or anything like that, but you can't blame them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, they're looking at it and they're saying, you know what? We've got this huge state. We're being overrun by people in another part of the state. We're not living the lifestyle that we would like to live.
Yeah.
And I hear that also from people in Southern Oregon about the Portland metro area.
Yeah.
This is not about. This is way too much about Portland area.
Well, if you read that whole article, that's exactly what they're saying. They don't understand our lifestyle and what we do in these rural areas. Sacramento's totally out of touch with Siskiyou County. And we'd have to say in some ways, Salem's out of touch with Jackson County.
Well, that's exactly right. And interestingly, last week, the state economist put out his forecast, and it didn't change very much.
Yeah.
Okay, and he said the economy was going to grow. But Josh Lehner is the guy. He's a PhD economist, really smart guy, really nice guy. And he came out and he said, I want to just raise an issue as an economist. We have a problem in this state, and that's the economic differential between the metro area and the rest of Oregon.
Really?
And he's looking at it from an economist's standpoint.
This isn't the first time they said it publicly, haven't they?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting. He's raising that issue as the state economist, saying we're becoming economically two states, and that creates huge economic dislocation and disjoint between how we govern and all. And I thought, that is a profound piece.
Well, we've known for quite some time Tri-County controls Salem to a certain degree.
Right.
I ran in the 2nd Congressional District, and I can tell you the mindset in the 2nd Congressional District doesn't even begin to fit the other 4 congressional districts.
That's correct. And the problem is that that Tri-County area believes that they can dictate to the rest of us, this is the way the state of Oregon should be. Right. And of course, you get into the local control issues, and we're different. But we have one set of land use. For example, we have one set of Oregon land use code that applies to everywhere. And you kind of look at that and go, no, that's not right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, in reading the article, apparently Siskiyou County, it's symbolic. This vote is symbolic. But it does set the discussion on the table in a fairly significant way. It would have to go down to Sacramento through the legislature for some further consideration or even allow it to get on the ballot. Then I think they have to come back to the various cities who would sign off on all of that. I would assume the same process would be for the counties of Oregon who would consider this. But they looked at it one time, David. It was kind of funny because they looked at it and thought, well, if we drew the line somewhere around Roseburg and we took it down to about Reading, somewhere in that area, it ended up being one of the richest natural resource states in the whole country.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Because of the forestry and the water.
That's correct. That doesn't surprise me at all. It would be absolutely amazing that the Portland area would say, "Oh, sure, you guys go ahead and take off on your own. We'll let you go." They're not going to let that happen.
No. Well, anyway.
But I think it's what's good about this is the symbolic message you've sent to them.
Right.
Look.
Get off our backs.
We're not taking this anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
All right, now Dave, you've been involved in this, and I'm assuming you have a rich military history. How many years?
27.
27 years in the Marine. And what was your rank when you retired?
Colonel.
A colonel.
Yeah.
And thank you for your service.
Welcome.
And then you're pulled into politics. What pulled you into this?
I didn't get pulled so much into politics as I got pulled into policy.
Okay.
And policy, that was my background. A graduate degree from the Naval War College in policy and strategy. Wow. And I just really got interested in this connection between where do we want to be and how do we get there and what are the things that need to happen. That's what pulled me into it. So I got pulled into policy, not into politics.
Yeah.
In a democracy, they become the same.
Yeah. I think there's another part of this. So sometimes you can get pulled in, you get pulled into public service, which happens to be political, unfortunately. All right, so you've made a big decision in your life. You want to share us, and you want to hear it here for the first time on
well,
Focus Today?
I am going to announce next Thursday that I'm running again for state senate.
Okay.
I'm going to run for District 3. It's the position I ran for 4 years ago, or three years ago now, and I'm going to go for it again.
Okay, and that's currently held by Senator Alan Bates.
That's correct.
That takes in portions of Ashland.
It takes in essentially the southern half of Jackson County,
okay, so it takes in all of it,
including most of Medford.
Most of Medford.
And out to Jacksonville. It does not take in just little small pieces of, say, Central Point and that kind of place.
And then on down through the to the bottom of the state.
Right.
All right. So you are going to officially announce that next
Thursday.
Next Thursday
at 10 o'clock at the county courthouse steps.
Well, we wish you the best, and I think with your experience and your volunteer service. Now, you went up there. Dave went up there as a volunteer to work with, at the time, House member Dennis Richardson, who's now running for governor.
Right.
And in that process, you learn how things work, and then the caucuses asked you to be their liaison, which in itself is quite an endorsement.
Yeah, and it ended up being that they brought me on, and they pay you nominally.
Yeah.
And but you know, it's all part of this whole idea of service. You know, it's interesting. Reading 2 Timothy, and it talked about fan the flames of the Spirit of God, and it talks because the Spirit gives you power, love, and self-discipline.
Right.
Well, that power is not about the secular progressive power.
Right.
It's about the power to participate and have the wisdom from God to understand what needs to be done. That's the power that moves me. It isn't about dictating to other people and, oh, I want to be in control and we got to do this and we've got to do that. No, that's not what that's about. That's not the power that we need from the Spirit. So those things motivate me, that I want to be part of that process.
Well, I commend you and wish you the best in this endeavor. And I guess you can't officially file it to when, the 26th or something?
No, actually the 12th.
The 12th. Okay.
The 12th. Yeah, that's the reason we picked the date. We just said, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down, I'm going to file at the courthouse, and then I'm going to have an announcement rally.
Okay, that's great. All right, part of this is so interesting. Oregon still is struggling. We have not done a whole lot to increase jobs. That's the end of the day. Where are the jobs? Where's the industry? What can we do to get this thing back on track?
Right. And the issue is, a job is not just about the economics of it. A job is spiritual. It's about who you are, and it's about who we are as a society.
Right.
And it says a lot about that. And again, this is where, for example, this issue with the Republicans about the small business tax relief.
Right.
Okay. Where do the jobs come from?
Small business.
Small business.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's help them out. Now, there's a trade-off, and that's where the Republicans have had to make this decision about, well, they're philosophically opposed to this tax increase, but okay, understand that they're not the party in power, and if they want to increase the jobs, you're going to have to give the other side something. Okay, and so they're biting their tongue or biting their lip and going, okay. And this is worth it, and so that's where that comes from. And you've just got to do that. The state has got to do the things that encourage those entrepreneurs and those small business people to produce those jobs. That's where it comes from.
Well, we just got to have it.
Yeah.
The general feeling in the state, as you worked in the caucuses, do you feel within the caucuses that there is a potential of a swing back to the right in the House and the Senate?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. There's that possibility. I mean, people are actually looking out there and seeing that, this is not working out. This is not working. We are well below, not only in Oregon but nationally, where we ought to be in economic growth and therefore job creation. That traditionally from a recession, and well below the average over the last 100 years of how the state and the national economy has been growing. And without that growth, you're just not going to have the jobs. You've got to have that growth. And that gets back to the natural resources and tax policy and all those other
everything
things.
We're talking about.
Exactly.
Well, the best to you again. He's announcing next week on the 12th that he will be running for the Oregon Senate again against sitting Senator Alan Bates. We haven't heard if he's going to run again yet, have we?
No, we have not.
We have not heard that. So chances are you'll have a fairly easy primary. Then things get a little heated up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
About a year from now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
No, I'm starting right now.
All right.
That's the whole point.
Blessings to you. You're in our
Thank you
thoughts
very
and
much.
prayers, and keep up the good work.
Well, thanks a lot.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, we're back, and my special studio guest today is Treva Kuyper. She heads up a ministry called The Loft. Now, that was formerly Girls' Nite In, but now it's called The Loft.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And I think one of the most resourceful ministries out there for girls and women. And
Absolutely.
what is it? I mean, to give us the essence of what The Loft is all about.
The Loft is an outreach ministry to the whole valley for our teen girls, 8th grade through 12th grade. And it is so our hearts at Community Bible Church that we reach out to these girls to help them navigate through life.
Wow.
We meet once a month through the whole school year, and we talk about things like sex and teen pregnancy, divorce and blended families. Yeah, we get real. We get real. And we have one coming up in November, a new topic called Netiquette, which is online etiquette and safety.
Really?
And we're going to have one of our police officers, Becca Venables, is going to come and talk to the girls and share with them and open their eyes to how to be safe online.
Wow.
So it's practical, but it's a way of allowing girls that have never met the Lord to be introduced to who He is, but girls that already know who the Lord is and are already
bring them in
and say, this is how we do life. Because the leaders that we have there, the women, we have 25 leaders,
wow.
and they're women that have walked these difficult roads.
Wow.
And they just have a heart to help these girls live in victory and not destruct.
Yeah.
You know,
that is so great, because we know things are tough out there, and few really just grab it and take it for what it is, and that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just like the other leaders, I'm co-director, but our other co-director, Patty Reed, our assistant director, Brianna Freeman, we've all walked these roads. We all know how hard it is to make it through junior high and high school. And I myself have a past. I have stuff in my past, and I want the girls to know that there's a way to navigate through the messy parts of life and still live in victory, and that's through Jesus Christ.
Right.
But the girls that don't know Him yet, we want to introduce them to the God that loves them. And so that's what this ministry is. And it's just once a month. But they come in the last 2 years. This is our 3rd year. The last 2 years, the girls have told me, this feels like family. This feels like a family of girls.
Oh, that's the essence, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how do people get involved, and what do they do? They call you at the church, or what?
Yep, they can call Community Bible Church in Central Point.
Right.
We meet the 2nd Sunday of every month starting in October. We have a kickoff party that we're super excited about, September 29th at 5:30 at CBC in Central Point. And we're going to have games and prizes. The girls are going to come. Parents are welcome to come and check us out. They can go on Facebook. We have The Loft Southern Oregon on Facebook. They'll get all the schedule of events, the concert nights, the movie nights, all the things that we're doing throughout the year. It'll be on The Loft Southern Oregon. We also have a webpage that we're working on. It's under construction, but it's theloftsouthern.oregon.com.
Long name, but amazing results.
It is. We want everybody to know that The Loft is the safe place for girls in Southern Oregon, and so that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
I just think the Loft thing is just really cool.
Yeah.
What's a typical night look like?
What a typical night look like? Well, we're going to do. We're going to have snacks for the girls. We're going to have coffee, iced coffees, things like that, kind of to loosen them up and help them feel comfortable. But every night that we meet, we have a topic that we go through. We have a special speaker that comes. It's a woman that I meet with, different every single month, that has a story. They share their testimony on what God did to bring them victory through whatever the topic is. So if it's divorce, it might be someone, like I am a child of 5 divorces. So I shared my testimony on the divorce night. And then I'll have someone come in that will share their story and giving the girls hope. Then they break up into small groups based on the grade. So all the freshmen are together, all the sophomores are together, all the 8th graders are together. And they have small group leaders where they get to discuss and ask questions. And then we have a question and answer time, where we have women come in and sit down with these girls, and the girls can ask them questions. Things that maybe they're not comfortable talking about at home.
Yeah, well, you know, and again, 8 to what, 12, 13, 14?
8th grade to 12th grade.
8th grade to 12th grade, right?
Yes.
You know, what's so interesting about that, that is the most impressionable and vulnerable years.
Absolutely.
You know, and self-esteem is everything if it's not dealt with.
Absolutely. Our very first topic in October is going to be, again, the second Sunday at 5:30. It's going to be on beauty. We're calling it Mirror, Mirror. The whole idea of our culture inundates these girls. It's like a battlefield for them.
Oh, they just, they're sexized at 10 or 8 or 5 or whatever. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that everything they feel like doing is okay. That's what the world says. Where God says, let me show you the truth. Let me show you who I am. Let me love you and show you how beautiful and special you are on the inside, how I created you. And we talk a lot about their creator. And we get girls that have never met the Lord. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So my heart is for those unsaved girls, but yet my heart is also to walk alongside the girls that do know Him and say, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. This is what God's Word says, and this is how we can get through these topics of sex and teen pregnancy, addictions, depression, beauty, online safety, you know.
Let me just ask you, before we run out too much time here, the whole subject of depression at that age, it's real, isn't it?
Oh, my word. Oh, my word, yes. And self-harm. Last year, one of our topics was self-harm. The cutting, the suicidal thoughts that come from depression. It is. There's a darkness. You know, the enemy wants to come and devour these girls, and there's a darkness that they suffer through. And we're not here to fix it. They're not going to come one night and then the next day they're fixed. They're fixed. But God does. So we introduce them to the one that can fix them.
You're planting good seeds in good soil.
Oh, we're trying.
Yeah.
We're trying. And God is blessing us. We average about 60 girls on a night.
60?
60. Yeah.
Whoa.
And I just want to see that number go up. I want them to bring their friends. When they bring their friends, they get entered into a special drawing. They win coffee. I love coffee. They win coffee cards. Yeah.
She's got it in the mug here.
So, you know, we just try to put our arms around them. And again, 25 women who have the same heart I do, our co-director, our assistant director, our pastor. We just want to gather them up, show them who God is, and get them through these topics. I am very excited about May. May is Let's Talk About Sex, Baby. That's actually a song from the 80s. And that, it's real. It's on there.
I let her say that. It's right there.
It's on there. We just get real with them, you know, because teenagers can sniff out a fake.
Yeah,
they really can. And so we are just super honest with them. But we're going to talk about sex in teen pregnancy in May. And then we have an organization that's coming through on tour called the Silver Ring Thing.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And one of our girls that was in our ministry the last 2 years is on tour with the Silver Ring Thing.
Wow.
They're going to be in Grants Pass.
Right.
So on May 7th, we're going to take our Loft girls to Grants Pass and go to this purity conference.
Works on that a lot up there.
Oh, love it.
That is absolutely terrific. Let me bump back up to November. Netiquette.
Yes. Yes. Netiquette.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. What is it again?
So that's the online safety, online etiquette. A lot of girls, the last couple weeks, I saw our girls on Facebook posting their school schedules.
Oh.
So it says what school they go to, what room number, what subject. And some of these girls have 1,000 friends on Facebook. So what if there is someone able to hack in or look over a shoulder of somebody that they're friends with, even if they trust those 1,000 people?
I'm so glad you're talking about this.
Yeah. So again, to have a police officer come, who's a woman, and talk to our girls and say, these are the reasons why you need to be safe. I mean, the parents are telling their kids this, but the kids, I don't think that they really get it.
Yeah, their parents, you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they hear it maybe from another source, it might sink in a little bit. And a lot of the Instagram and Facebook, a lot of the pictures that are of themselves, you know, we want to just remind them of how they're dressing in those pictures and what guys can see about them and how they're presenting themselves. Again, it all goes back to, you know, God created you so beautiful. Let's walk in that. Let's believe that and walk in that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, the other part of this is that what really concerns me is so often young girls are overwhelmed with peer pressure. Overwhelmed with, my wife and I, we chatted about this several times. I don't know if we could raise kids today. I mean, how tough is it?
It is so tough. It is so tough. I get messages, private message on Facebook of girls that are pregnant, girls that are cutting, girls that are in the emergency room for suicidal thoughts. And some of that, or a lot of it, is that peer pressure, not always because someone's going to come up to them now and say, hey, do you want to smoke this joint? Or hey, do you want to do this? But it's just the environment is so dark. And when they go to school, they're not just going to school to learn. It's a battlefield. They're going and they have to kind of weed through all the garbage. And at the end of the day, if they're exhausted, it may not be because their subjects are hard. It may be because without them even knowing it, they've had to kind of battle through that day, every day.
What do you do when you hear things you know you got to take action on?
Well, and there's a lot of those. We pray about it and we go to our pastor and ask him about it in way of the Loft and ask him what we should do, and then we get the parents involved. If it's if suicidal thoughts, suicidal tendencies, we weep with the girls. I mean, we've prayed. Brianne and I have prayed with a girl and cried with her because our heart breaks for them, and we'll get the parents involved. Sometimes on lighter issues, on things that we think that we can help them and talk something through with them. We do a lot of outside coffee dates, take the girls to coffee, see what's going on in their world, try to help them maybe by sharing a story from our own past and say, this is what God did in our life, and just be that constant in their world, that faithful friend, that faithful mentor in their world.
Well, this is all coming up. Starts on the 29th. That's your kickoff party.
Yes.
And if you have a young girl and you want to get them involved, what do they do?
Absolutely. Call Community Bible Church in Central Point. Get on Facebook, the Loft Southern Oregon. And they will get you to me. And so we will guide and direct them. We would love to have them and all their friends.
And all their friends. How about that? And it's only one night a month. And so coming up is the big kickoff party on the 29th. And then October 13th, you start on and you go all the way through till June. We do. And some of these subjects are absolutely spot on. So, well, Treva, thank you.
Thank you.
You're going to do fine.
Thank you.
Somewhere maybe halfway through, let's get together and see how it's going.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.